Hello, Internet. I'm Matt.
And I'm Monster Punter.
And this is the Parallax Scrolling Podcast, where we give you our perspective on video games and the news that affects them. And there's stuff happening outside, so if you hear extra little bumps and stuff, well, I have no control over that.
Yes.
Yeah. But we're back. It's been a couple weeks, almost 3 weeks. It's been crazy. It's been a crazy time. Monsters had a lot of work to do. I've also had some complications come up. So trying to get out even like a solo episode was kind of impossible for either of us.
My work has kept me from punting monsters.
Yeah. Speaking of preventing people from doing anything to monsters, I don't know what's happened, Niantic, but give me back access to Monster Hunter now. Dude, like, just the past several days has not let me logged in.
I'm able to play.
Yeah, I hate you. I don't know what's going on.
Is it the Apple version?
I don't know. I don't know. I tried. I tried doing everything. I don't know. I'll have to keep fighting with it. But anyways, that's been part of the joy that I've been experiencing over the past couple of weeks.
Joy, he says.
Yeah. But I do actually have some games to talk about, if I can remember them all. I was talking to you again about a game from last time. I started playing Cocoon. That's what it was.
Yes.
It's a puzzle game. It was pretty cool.
Did it get in pods?
I have no idea what the game's about or what happened, and I beat it. I have no idea. It was very trippy.
Okay.
Like at the end, you make the cosmos or something. I don't know. It's weird. But it had some very cool elements. It was a fun time. After that, I picked up the sequel to Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion. I played Turnip Boy Robs a Bank. That's really... Those are some really great games. It's kind of disturbing, though. There is an underlying story that they haven't touched on that is really messed up. They give you hints, and basically everyone is a mutated vegetable person after a nuclear apocalypse. That's kind of the main story.
Okay.
It's the hidden story. But after that, I beat that, and then I went on to start up Dealfield Chronicle.
Yes.
And that's actually a pretty cool game. I got my druthers. I can only have 4 people on the field at any time. I do like that I can give each of them a backup unit that gives them extra skills.
Mm-hmm. So
you kind of make different characters, sort of. But it gets really hard about halfway through the game. The difficulty spiked on me, which, challenge is challenge.
When was the last time you played a strategy game where they allowed 12 people, like the old school Shining Force games?
Disgaea.
Okay.
Any of the Disgaeas. With the one we were talking about earlier today, Fell Seal, I think you could have 6 or 7.
Yeah, but I mean, let's
right.
go.
No, I'm saying, but I think that's the biggest I've seen since.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of rough.
Give me 12 people again.
Yeah, give me some actual full scale army battle type games, one I'll talk about later, but I'm not gonna talk about it right now. What about you? I know you've been working on a bunch of stuff, but
not really. But
I mean, if you had time for gaming, is what I'm asking. You've been working. Have you had time for games at all?
Well, today, since my work has calmed down, I actually beat Crisis Core.
Woo!
So now I can finally play 7 Remake. Final Fantasy 7
Rebirth,
Remake.
you mean?
Rebirth, that's
You get it confused. It's okay.
Yeah, sorry.
They both start with Final Fantasy 7 Re.
Yes.
So I don't know how to take that how you want.
I've also played a lot of Donut Dodo.
Dude, Donut Dodo. That game is awesome.
It's available on Steam for everybody who, doesn't have... I guess it's on Nintendo Switch, and I don't know if it's on...
It is
Xbox.
on Switch, yes.
I know it's on Switch. I don't know if it's on Xbox and PlayStation.
I don't know.
But it's $6 normally. Even at regular price, $6, at least on Steam.
It's very worth it.
Very worth it. I have it for Evercade because I got it in the Indie Heroes 3 Evercade cartridge.
It's kind of the only game on there that makes it worth it.
Yeah, it's the only way you can own it physically, too.
Yeah. That game is fun.
No, there's other games on that cartridge.
I mean, I'm sure there are, but Donut Dodo's really the big draw.
Donut Dodo's great, though. if you want a one-screen platformer, or if you want to try the one-screen platformer, something like Donkey Kong in the games of the early 80s, but done way better than them, give it a try. I was surprised at how much I liked it.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you ever enjoyed games like Donkey Kong or Donkey Kong Jr., definitely, if you want a newer take on that kind of stuff, Donut Dodo's where to go. It's really good.
Yeah, I was surprised at how much I liked that game.
Yeah.
It's very, very rare that I go back to that era of video game and like it as much as I do now. But it's a modern game done in that old style.
Yeah.
All you have is a jump, and the man doesn't have very much hops.
Nope, and he's being chased by a toilet. We don't know why.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know why he's being chased by a toilet. Maybe the toilet's mad at him and like, dude, you need to go.
You're eating all these donuts, man. You better hurry up.
You're gonna need me soon. I'm following you. But no, that's what I've been playing.
All right. Well, it's good stuff. Let's go into comments. We do have 2 comments. Both of them are from that one dude. Shout out to that one dude. First off, in response to the question he asked us about fighting game supers and what was our favorite, he told us what his was. My favorite fighting game super is Dizzy's instant kill from Guilty Gear Zerd. It's pretty funny, in my opinion.
We watched that.
We actually watched a video that had all the reactions from all the different characters, and my favorite by far was Chip's reaction, where he's like doing the meme, like looking in the bag and pointing at it. Yeah, it's pretty funny. For those of you who don't know what it is, if you know Guilty Gear, Dizzy's a character. She has like an angel and a devil literally over her shoulders. Technically death, but whatever. Anyways, her instant kill, the death guy charges up a big beam attack, and Dizzy pushes him out of the way as to not kill the opponent, but what ends up happening is the shot grazes their cheek almost. It explodes in the background like an atom bomb, to which every person promptly looks at the explosion, looks back at the screen, and then surrenders.
Yep.
It's just straight up, I quit. I'm done.
Yep.
So yeah, they're pretty funny. Pretty good.
Yep.
Then on to his actual comment/question for us. When I'm at work, I listen to podcasts and audiobooks. One audiobook I just finished was Console Wars by Blake J. Harris, and it goes into detail about the rivalry between Sega and Nintendo in the 90s. It was interesting hearing about everything going on between the companies, but all this stuff happened before I was even born. Thanks for reminding us how old we are. By the time I got around...
That was his commentary.
That was my commentary, yeah. Sorry. By the time I got around to playing games on my GameCube, Sega was already a third party. So my question is, what was it like to witness the rivalry between the two companies, and where were you guys into Sega or Nintendo more? Back in my day, we had Pong and we liked it. Is that what you want? Sorry.
Back in my day, we had dirt and we liked it. Sorry.
It's a great question, though. Thank you. Yeah, keep going.
It depends on what era we're talking about here. I had a Nintendo during the 8-bit era. That's what my dad got us. Oh, I guess I should also say I had a Commodore 64, too. So I had a Nintendo and I had a Commodore 64. And both systems were good. I didn't do very much computing with the Commodore 64. It really was just kind of a games machine for me.
Yeah.
And the 64 in the Commodore stood for 64 kilobytes.
Which was a big deal back then.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Especially when the Nintendo had bankable memory switching of 40 kilobytes. The original Super Mario Brothers is a 40 kilobyte cartridge.
Yep.
And until they had bank switching, that was the largest you could go, was 40 kilobytes. Mm-hmm. But all that stuff was like playground fodder, right?
It was.
I mean, I'm sure that playgrounds, right, of today, and even,
do children even outside anymore? I don't know.
It depends.
Like, I don't know if children are outside anymore.
My sister kept my nephew inside and wouldn't let him leave the block. She was afraid. Anyway,
Yes.
either way,
Yeah.
like I am sure the playground arguments still go on to this day between Xbox and PlayStation and maybe even PC and everything like that now. People are always going to find something to fight about.
Right.
But when I was growing up, I had the Nintendo at that point, and I was a hardcore Nintendo fanboy at that point. At that age, you got whatever you had, and you had to defend it.
Yep.
Because you weren't going to get the other thing.
Because it was precious to you, and how dare somebody say something negative about what you find precious.
And honestly, like the Sega Master System had some good games on it, but vastly inferior to the Nintendo from a game library standpoint.
Oh, absolutely.
It's just the way it is. Graphically superior to the Nintendo, but vastly inferior from a game library standpoint. Then my parents got me a Sega Genesis for Christmas. And at first, I was really mad. I think I've said this story before. I wanted a TurboGrafx 16. My friend had a TurboGrafx 16. I thought it was pretty darn cool. I wanted a TurboGrafx 16. My parents got me a Sega Genesis. I think I know why, actually, because at Christmas, I got my Sega Genesis. The TurboGrafx 16 was still $200, and the Genesis was $150. So I think my dad got the Genesis because it was cheaper. Mm-hmm. And the thing is that because of licensing and how the Hudson Soft did everything with the TurboGrafx 16, like they couldn't really make it a whole lot cheaper, and it just died because of it. Anyway, so going back to that, the Sega Genesis, I had the first year I had my Sega Genesis, unless I rented a game, I had Pac-Mania and Sonic the Hedgehog. And I learned to love both those games. Sonic because it was just an awesome game anyway. But Pac-Mania because, it wasn't as good as traditional Pac-Man in my opinion, but it could still be fun.
It was what you had.
And it's what I had, yeah. And I became a hardcore Sega fanboy and have been one ever since. I don't know what else to say other than between Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis, I would take a Sega Genesis.
Okay, what about the next steps though? Because let's just go all the way up till that one dude said GameCube era. So before GameCube stepped in and Sega stepped away, like how would you place them all? And then I'll share my stories.
Well, honestly, when the PlayStation came out, it was PlayStation versus Saturn for just a little bit.
It was. Saturn was awesome.
The Saturn had amazing games on it. Arguably better games than the PlayStation. But what the PlayStation was doing at that point in time was promoting 3D graphics. And 3D graphics was the big thing. And Sega didn't develop the Saturn with 3D in mind at first. In fact, it was added later to the console. And they wanted it to be a 2D powerhouse, which, to be honest with you, it had perfect conversions from the Neo Geo and things like that. It was actually a really good 2D system. But 3D, and it just wasn't as good at. It could push a lot of polygons, but it pushed quads and other things like that instead of triangles. Anyway, and just the complex nature of the architecture because of all the different chips that were in it. For people at the time, when you had two main processors and you had two visual display processors and you had a sound processor and then you had to manage the RAM and everything between all those, and it's all over the same bus, and it was very difficult to program for, and consequently the PlayStation was much easier to. It's no wonder the PlayStation won out.
Yeah.
So yes, from a total game library standpoint, the PlayStation stomps all over the Sega Genesis or the Sega Saturn. But if you look at the game library from 95 through like 97, 98, it's arguably a better game library on the Sega Saturn.
Okay.
They had awesome games. I put tons of time into Virtua Fighter 2, tons of time into like Panzer Dragoon. Oh, and who can forget Guardian Heroes? I put so much time into Guardian Heroes. Loved it. So I loved my Sega Saturn. Loved it.
So
Still have it.
Yeah. So let's do this. It's kind of a Nintendo versus Sega question. Let me ask. So, Nintendo versus Master System.
Nintendo.
Super Nintendo versus Genesis.
Sega Genesis.
Okay. N64 versus. We're gonna go through all of them. Sega CD.
Why would you do N64 versus Sega CD?
Because we're going in progression.
Sega CD came out in like 92.
I know. But it was just
N64 came out in 96.
I know. It's still progression, okay? And hey, I'm not done. I'm going to go to 32X and I'm going to go to Saturn.
Okay.
But it's the N64 versus all three of those.
My gosh. Okay, N64 over... I'll play your game. N64 over Sega CD.
Okay. N64 over 32X?
Yes.
N64 versus Saturn.
Saturn.
Okay. That was it. That was all.
I still think the Saturn had a better library overall than the
absolutely.
N64.
Yeah. So, as per my aspect of the Great Console War of 85 to 95...
Well, you forgot.
Which one?
Sega Dreamcast was amazing, too.
Well, right, but that's in a category all by itself. The N64 could compare to the Dreamcast.
But the Dreamcast was awesome.
The Dreamcast was amazing.
That one dude emulates some Sega Dreamcast games. I mean, they're going to be... It's still considered the early days of 3D gaming, so, there's going to be some hiccups comparatively speaking, and maybe it's lost its luster a little bit, but the games at the time the system was new was mind-blowing.
It's still something wholly new. And honestly, Soul Calibur on Dreamcast, the fact that it emulated so perfectly from the arcade is amazing.
The Sega Dreamcast had a better than arcade perfect conversion of Soul Calibur.
Yes.
Plain and simple. The Soul Calibur at the arcade was the board it ran on was a derivative of the PlayStation board. Mm-hmm. It was a better version of the PlayStation board, but it was a derivative of it. And the Sega Dreamcast just stomped the arcade version. It was amazing.
Yeah, the arcade was slower and took a little bit to load. Yeah, that was much better.
The graphics for the characters and everything at the time. Oh, man. I played so much of that game. That was a great game.
All right, so from my perspective, we grew up with a Nintendo, and I do have to make this little side caveat. My parents sacrificed a lot for their kids' happiness. So I just want to say that going forward. So you'll understand what's going on. We had a Nintendo. We had a Nintendo for a very long time. Up until my brother, I think about the time I turned like 10, he got a Sega Genesis for Christmas. All right, so he was totally attached to his Sega Genesis, and who could blame him? The first game he got was Shining in the Darkness. But he loved his Genesis, and I don't blame him. I've envied him a lot. But I kept playing the Nintendo, and I played all the Nintendo games, and we kept getting Nintendo games, and he kept getting Genesis games, and there was a campaign in, like, was it the early 90s, late 80s, where Sega came out, and the catchphrase was, Genesis does what Nintendo don't.
Yep.
And my brother would like to torment me with this statement. And my dad, I still remember this moment because the look of pride on my dad's face for my instant comeback. Because one day my brother looks at me and goes, yeah, well, Genesis does what Nintendo don't. And I immediately turn around and I go, yeah, well, Nintendo is what Genesis isn't. And my dad's like, I'm so proud of you. I could just tell it in the look on his face. I felt great. But it's hard for me to say, like, did I have a line that I supported? Because when I got to be 14, I won a contest to get a gift certificate that I used to buy myself a Super Nintendo. Because I loved all the games on Super Nintendo. While my brother still had his Genesis. And there were days when my brother was going to college and he wasn't home for the day. I would be playing on his Genesis without him knowing. In fact, there was a couple times he came home and caught me playing his Genesis. Yeah, it didn't go too well. But yeah, no, I just love video games. I'm just a video game. I'm like a third party, neutral party. I'm Switzerland in the video game era. If it's a cool game and I can play it, I'm gonna play it.
But you would okay.
Yeah.
What did you argue on the playground?
What did I argue on the playground?
Yeah.
I argued not hitting me with things versus hitting me with things.
You know what I mean.
No, I'm not, like, honestly, when it came to video games, I didn't get to argue with a lot of people. A lot of people didn't want to talk video games.
Okay.
But there were a lot of Nintendo kids in my school. So it was always talking about codes and power-ups. And mainly if there's an argument, it was like, what game was better to play on your Nintendo versus something else? You know? So, yeah.
I mean, you can look at this as cool and not cool, and depending on which angle you want to come from. But one of the interesting things from that gaming era is the fact that you could have two games that are named the same
Be totally different.
Yes.
I think one of the best examples, or honestly, a lot of stuff from Warner Brothers in the 90s, games that they released, you're like, this game is not the same.
Yeah, if you got the Super Nintendo version of Aladdin.
Oh yeah, the Aladdin from the Disney games. The Disney games and the Warner Brothers games, they all had the same title, but they were both vehemently different games.
Yeah.
But like I'm thinking of like the Animated Adventures of Batman and Robin.
Okay.
Two totally different games. Which one's better? The Super Nintendo one. Everyone will tell you that because the Sega Genesis one, A, is super hard and unfair, unforgiving, and it doesn't feel right. Whereas, like, the Super Nintendo one, the animations are very reminiscent of what's in the cartoon, and it felt better.
Yeah.
All right? Animaniacs. Again, Super Nintendo. Because the Animaniacs one was literally playing the Animaniacs on a, what do you call that? 45-degree angle view. Isometric, like a brawler. Yeah. But it's not a brawler, but you're running through the movie studio sets doing all this crazy stuff. And there's a lot of in-jokes, and there's a lot of, like, they make fun of movies and pop culture throughout the entire game. And the Genesis one is a 2D platformer shooter. Totally didn't fit the vibe of the Animaniacs. So, like, those are the two ones that immediately pop into my head as these were so different. But yeah, like the Lion King, Aladdin, so different.
The Genesis version of Aladdin is the one to play.
Yeah.
It was so impressive for the time. Like, I remember plugging that into my Sega Genesis and being blown away by the animation and how true to the cartoon it was.
Yeah.
It was, and still is, an impressive piece of technology for that system.
Conversely, the Lion King. Ugh. It was brutal. It's notoriously brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if I was to compare them like I had you compare them, I would say Nintendo over Master System. I'm actually torn on Super Nintendo versus Genesis because they both have amazing games, both have pros and cons.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard for me to take a stance on that one. But then when you hit N64 versus anything else, Sega CD, 32X, Saturn, all go in the direction of Sega. The 64, I think, is I can't. There's very few games on N64 that I'm like, man, those games were awesome.
Let me be quite frank. I would be willing to bet dollars to donuts on this one here.
Dollars to donut dodos?
Yes.
Okay, there we go.
If GoldenEye was not on that system,
yeah,
it would not have succeeded.
Right.
There was a point in time where everybody and their mother wanted GoldenEye. It was the highest selling game on the system, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. Everybody wanted GoldenEye. Everybody wanted to play the 4-player mode. Everybody wanted to play through the story. Everybody wanted it.
Right.
And
even though it's not that great a game.
And it sold the Nintendo 64 in a way that no other game did.
Right.
Even more than Mario 64.
Even more than Zelda.
Yeah.
And Perfect Dark kind of helped keep it alive a little bit longer. And I think the last game that really gave it any sort of oomph was Conker's Bad Fur Day.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. But beyond that, and notice every GoldenEye, Perfect Dark, Conker's Bad Fur Day. None of those are straight up Nintendo games.
Yeah,
Nintendo games could not keep a Nintendo system afloat at that time.
Somewhat. I mean, well, they did come out with Pokemon Stadium, and that was wildly popular.
I guess. But
that Pokemon Stadium came out long after GoldenEye.
It was near the end of the era.
Yeah. You may not have ever gotten to Pokemon Stadium if it wasn't for GoldenEye.
Absolutely.
So.
And honestly, I think the only reason why it was still contention at that point was because Microsoft and Halo. Because you had people who would still, to the point when Halo came out, you either play GoldenEye or you're playing Halo, and that was kind of the argument there.
Oh man, Halo is so much better.
Yeah, it is. We're not even arguing that one. But yeah, so yes, we remember it well. We can remember it fondly and unfondly, and definitely, it's funny now because as an adult looking back at. Trying to see anybody argue online about the console wars, like, you guys are dumb. Like, these are just dumb comments. Who cares?
Listen here, I'm not opposed to arguing a little bit for the Sega Genesis nowadays, but let me tell you, we still have aftermarket games coming out, also known as homebrew games. The Sega Genesis won because they have more homebrew games coming out for it. Okay,
yeah.
we'll just drop that one there.
So there you go, that one, dude. That's our opinions and our recollection of war stories. I don't know if he's still doing these, but a quick shout out to a webcomic called Control Alt Delete, and the artist has many different ongoing comic series, but one of them is literally the console wars, but it's like the consoles as people in a wartime scenario.
Oh goodness!
And it got pretty silly. So, check those out. Okay, time for news, and we got a lot to catch up on. So if you've already heard some of this news, we do apologize, but you haven't heard it from us. That's a first. Do you want to start first, or do you want me to go first? Okay. So I want to talk about this one because I think this is a very important conversation for us. This came back from back at the end of March via Game Informer. Take-Two purchases Gearbox Entertainment from Embracer Group for $460 million. Remember before when Embracer kind of came out of the woodwork? Like, not even, was it last year?
No,
or was it the year before?
It's been several years.
No, we started talking about them on the podcast.
Yeah, but like they've been working and buying games and studios,
right?
For a while.
But their popularity in buying stuff wasn't until we started the podcast. This is like, how do you respond to this? Because it's like you guys bit off way more than you could chew, and that's kind of evident here.
Yeah.
But yeah, they sold it for $460 million. They're also, they put up, was it Saber Group? Saber Interactive. They're going to be selling for $500 million.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just a bad sign. It's a bad sign. It's a bad take. You guys... well,
they got too big, too fast.
Yeah,
and
that's kind of what I was aiming at, but you're right. Keep going.
The thing is that it just goes back to what can kill a startup company faster than anything else. And sure, you can have a startup that dies because they're not successful, right? Mm-hmm. Or, to be it a business, be it anything. If the startup does not make enough money, it's going to fail. Obviously, that's the way business goes.
Yeah.
But you can also fail because you're too successful. It's really weird, but that's true. If you are too successful and you don't have the infrastructure in place to handle that influx or have the ability to bolt on infrastructure to meet that demand quickly, you can find yourself failing because you can't keep up with demand. You start getting bad reviews. You start getting all these other things. And you might pursue options that... to fill the demand that actually you lose money on, and you could end up failing that way too. Believe it or not, being too successful is a thing.
Yeah, and I think this is just the beginning, not just for Embracer Group. I think for all those companies, we're just constantly trying to buy everybody up at one point. I think this is going to backfire. I think you're going to start seeing... This is the reason why diversifying in the market is a good thing.
Well, Embracer Group took a bunch of investor money. They basically operated as a private equity group, went around and bought tons of games with investor money.
Did anything come from those games? Did anything come from those games?
They still kept releasing some games. But I don't know what they bought... The Gearbox for. I don't know what they bought Gearbox for. But
they bought it for $460 million, so...
Well, no, I mean, did they buy it themselves for $460 million?
Yeah.
That's how much they sold. How much they sold?
Oh, no, how much did Embracer? I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question.
Yes.
I don't know how much...
Let's see how much they did. Go ahead and...
No, I just... while you're looking it up, I just figured, it's just a bad look. It's just a bad idea. And I expect other... companies. Are you kidding me? Sorry, I got completely dropped by this. They sold it for $1.3 billion.
Yeah, they bought it for $1.3 billion, sold it for $460 million.
Oh gosh, and they're also laying off people. Amongst all this, they're hemorrhaging right now. This is not a good look for Embracer Group.
Yeah.
So keep your eyes peeled. I just know that there's a lot of games, a lot of IPs that they did buy that they never did anything with, and I'm kind of, in the scope of video game preservation, I'm worried about those IPs.
Yeah.
So just keep your ears open on that one, folks.
Speaking about the future of video games, Ubisoft a little while ago shut down The Crew. And which is a racing game. It didn't have too many, a large group of people playing it at the time. But the controversial thing is it was online only. And they had no backup way. They canceled The Crew without any way for people who still wanted to play that game to play it. It just kind of went off into the ether and never was able to be played again. Sure, something will come along eventually, but... The interesting thing that came out of this is a company that's being spearheaded by a fellow they called it Stop Killing Games website, and they're basically kind of trying to put together a argument for probably Congresses and other things like that around the nation to start bringing more attention to it. It's just a matter of time. Because at the end of the day, all these games are part of our collective culture. Mm-hmm. And preserving our culture in some form or another is important. I mean, think about how much time, effort, energy, and everything that goes into preserving things like the Egyptian culture and us knowing about that. And things like that. So I think it's really important. And I think an excellent example of this is something I've dealt with. A game called Nosgoth. I've told you about before. Yeah. It's a 4v4 game by Square Enix of humans versus vampires. And basically the humans and the vampires have different classes and different abilities per, character. And it was a ton of fun, but they ended up killing the game and pulling the servers. And so it was just a terrible, sad moment. But eventually, somebody came around and said, hey, guess what, guys? I got servers up for this game. Let's keep playing. Yeah.
So will this happen for The Crew? Probably. But I think this is a step in the right direction, because now with this lawsuit going forward, we may stop seeing an end to online-only games.
Maybe. We'll see.
I hope. But I really hope.
Stop Killing Games has 4 things that they're trying to get pushed through governments around the world.
Yep.
Number 1, games sold must be left in a functional state. Mm-hmm. Meaning, when the game is stopped being supported, you can still access it, play it, or you have ways to play it.
Right.
Number 2, games sold must require no further connection to the publisher or affiliated parties to function. That doesn't mean that They don't
They don't get their money. They still get their money. It's just when you have a server up, it shouldn't matter.
Yeah, in other words, like if you're playing League of Legends, you can connect to League of Legends servers, play all you want. But if you want to make a server for you and your friends, make a server for you and your friends and you play. That's basically what that
would actually, I think that would increase the popularity of games like Overwatch.
Possibly. The above also applies to games that have sold microtransactions to customers. So that way, you know, if you put money into a game, it's not all gone if the game shuts down.
Right.
Think about this. For all those people who are playing League of Legends, if League of Legends just went away tomorrow and you didn't have any way to preserve it, and you've dumped hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars into that game,
For your costumes,
gone.
yeah.
Poof, gone. Forever. Nothing. It's just gone. So, in other words, for online games, for live service games, everybody, you have to assume, or not assume, but hope that your game is successful so that the money you sunk into your game doesn't go poof.
Right.
That's really what it comes down to. And probably the most important point, the fourth bullet here, is the above cannot be superseded by end user license agreements. So that means that the games left in a functional state require no connection. Also applies to microtransactions. None of that can be circumvented by putting a line in the end user license agreement that nobody reads. And all of a sudden, you've just given up all these things. Right. So these guys need everybody. Everybody needs to support what these guys are doing.
If we can, we should get the link and put it in our notes or annotation for
it's
this
right
episode.
Here.
I know. We should put it in our
yes.
So hopefully future Matt will remember and actually put the link in the in the annotations down below the video, because I still haven't done that for all the other guys. I said to go support, but we definitely want to get this one some love.
Exactly.
But yeah, that's kind of crazy. What else you got?
Well, someone.
Yes, let's do this. Let's do this one. Let's go. All right, we're gonna get political for a second. Ready?
I don't know about political, but I'll say this much, because we need a segue, right? We need a segue. Speaking of someone who probably would never care about game preservation whatsoever, he just wants people's money. Vladimir Putin pushes Russia to make consoles that will compete with PlayStation and Xbox.
He's stupid.
I'm not saying that the Russian people are not capable. I'm sure they are.
Oh, sure they are. Him, I have sincere doubts about.
Well, no, he's just going to tell other people to do it. And
I know, but still, it's just like...
What
makes it worse, though, is that he actually looks like the CEO of a video game company. Especially with that picture. With that
like our video game? We kill you. I don't know what accent that was. I'm sorry.
That was terrible.
Yes, it was.
I apologize to all our Russian listeners.
Yes.
All one of you, if you exist. I don't know.
But that's my best Kremlin impersonation. Never listened to the guy in my life, but I'm sure he sounded just like that.
The Kremlin's a building, dude.
The Kremlin. They call him the Kremlin.
No, they don't.
Yeah, they do.
It's not the Kremlin.
It's a gremlin. Kremlin.
Yes, I know. The Kremlin is a building. It's a government building like the White House.
Whatever. It doesn't matter.
You just gave the voiceover for a building.
It doesn't matter.
Anyways, it was a stupid argument. It was a stupid story. Are you going to make a system that's going to compete with PlayStation and Xbox? No. Are you going to make a system? Probably. Yeah.
Do you have anything else?
I got a couple others, but I figure if you want to do yours.
Go for it.
Well, okay. This particular story is of one near... These last two I have are actually near and dear to my heart. So Final Fantasy 16. The final DLC is coming out, The Rising Tide. All right? And the producer... hopefully I'm pronouncing this correctly. Naoki Yoshida has shared in an article an interview with The Gamer.
The Gamer.
Somebody asked him if he was going to make a game what would be the next type of game to work on, or if you would bring 16 into any other type of gameplay style. And he basically said words that just make my heart sing happy noises. He wants to bring back Final Fantasy Tactics. You want one of the greatest tactics games of all time? It is literally Final Fantasy Tactics. Shining Force, absolutely amazing series. But as a standalone game, Tactics hits different. For that to have a series, oh, I'd be so excited.
Actually, did they allow 12 people in your party?
In Tactics?
I can't remember.
I can't remember right now either. But I know that...
I know you had a lot.
You had a lot.
Yeah, maybe it was 12.
When one of the final end game classes is called the Calculator, and his whole job is I can cast any spell or ability based on height, range, level, turn order number, and you could just decimate a battlefield with a spell that shouldn't do that? He's awesome. He's a turn in my eye. But no, seriously, I think this is fantastic, especially when you find out that most of the Final Fantasy 16 team are fans of Tactics, and some of them actually worked on Tactics. So it's just, yay, please, another Tactics game. They even asked... So the gamer asked them, well, hey, what about doing like Final Fantasy 16 in a Tactics style game? And his response was, how would we even do the icon versus icon battles in that style? If you have the icons, how many squares is an icon going to be? I think it's a great response, because those things are huge. Yeah. They're huge. When you play through 16, they're the size of buildings.
Kaijus.
Yeah, they really are kaijus. And that, which brings up an excellent point my brother once told me when I was first playing through 16. He said, yeah, if anybody could make a really good Godzilla game, it'd be Square Enix. Considering what they did with 16. Because it is pretty awesome. The icon battles are pretty Godzilla-esque.
Okay.
So yeah, give them some support. Find out where, like their social medias, and just say, yes, we totally endorse you bringing back Final Fantasy Tactics and making more of those games. Please. Thank you. And my last story, for those who needed to hear it, Hollow Knight Silksong has gotten a ratings approval in South Korea. That's one of the first people to get the game. It's coming soon. Rejoice, rejoice, my fellow children of the Metroidvanias. Our time is coming. That story came out about 10 days ago, and I got excited and had to talk about that. Speaking of which, my own personal Metroidvania list, I'm not going to number it anymore, but I will be having my top Metroidvania list coming out, so hopefully in the near future, because I am working on it and I'm refining it now. So anyhow, you got some stories. Let's finish this out.
So,
by the way, real quick, if you can hear a concert going on underneath us as we're talking, I do apologize. People around here don't care. So anyhow,
yeah, sorry.
one day we'll get a studio where nobody can make sounds at us.
So Hellblade 2 dev says people want shorter games. And you know what? I agree with that sentiment.
I agree based on the style of game.
Yeah, I guess so. Here's the thing, like, everybody talks about having a backlog that is stupid long now.
Yep.
Wouldn't it be nice to be able to get through your backlog in a reasonable period of time?
And maybe have an excuse to go back to games you bought?
Here's the thing. We might be going into an era where is the exact opposite of what happened in the late aughts and early teens, or the early 2010s. People were complaining, especially at that time, paying $60 for a game that might be, I don't know, 6 to 10 hours long.
3 hours was usually kind of
sometimes
average.
Even as low as 3.
Yeah.
And so people got really, really upset. And so they started people wanted longer games. So what ended up happening?
You got Witcher 3 with 1,000 hours in the game.
There's just a lot of bloat in video games now. A lot of things that have done. Running from point to point on a map where, you spend maybe a quarter of your game time just running to places on a map, which is not meaningful gameplay whatsoever. That might have been cut out in a previous game, but is included in games now that, to pad time so that people don't complain about having such a short game.
That, depending on certain games, though, that is part of the aesthetic. Like if they're really focusing on their art style and they're really pushing, hey, look at this really beautiful scenery from this particular angle, that's one thing. But like there have been plenty of other games where it's like, hey, I'm going to say this till my dying day. Go collect 100 feathers. Why, Ubisoft? Why 100 feathers? I'm just going to go find a pigeon and pluck it till I get them all.
I use this as like a stupid example, but with open world games or other games in general now, the world is ending. You need to go save it.
Yeah.
But
Bob the baker needs you to make 10 pies.
Hey, Sonny, would you mind taking the pail down to the well and getting me some water? My knees just aren't good enough anymore.
Meanwhile, Gorzog the Death Dragon's in the background going, Rah!
Yes, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But that's what's happening now. It's a pad out time. It's meaningless content that doesn't do anything for the story. Sure, maybe you're figuring out things about the world that the game exists in, but do you really need to know some of these things? No, they're just there to pad out time.
I feel like a lot of it is like runoff from MMOs.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like the MMO style, everyone's like, oh, because WoW sold so well at that time, so if we put that into our game, we'll sell tons of our game. I'm like, no, there's a difference.
Yeah. So, do people want shorter games? Sure.
Yes.
Hellblade is going to be around 8 hours long. It's going to be $50.
That's longer than the first game.
Yes, it is. Well, actually, no, it's about the same.
Really? I thought the first game was only 6.
Something. It's around 8 hours-ish.
Yeah, still, not bad.
Either way, it's going to be on Game Pass. You can subscribe to Game Pass, beat it, unsubscribe to Game Pass if you so wish. But $50 is not an unreasonable price for that game, especially with some of the stuff they're doing. I'm really looking forward to playing this game. The stuff that they do with the audio in it, oh my god.
Well, we'll see what they do with the second one because they may do something different.
Oh no, they're doing
they've already confirmed
binaural audio
okay,
again.
Cool.
In fact, if you watch some of the videos, especially like the Microsoft Direct, they have a mic sitting there, kind of like what we got going on here.
Yeah.
And the people are singing and running around the mic and things like that. And so it's going to be an experience. Play this game with headphones. For the love of all things holy, play the game with headphones. Please. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes, shorter games. I'm all for it right now.
And what's not awesome?
Yeah, well, definitely not.
Talk about it. Finish it up.
Baldur's Gate 3 Actor. This is brought to you by PC Gamer. Baldur's Gate 3 Actor tear into AI voice cloning. AI just in general is a big problem. In fact, there's people using AI clones of people's voices to scam them. So something to be careful about. But this voice actor's take on it is AI voice cloning is stealing not just my job, but my identity. I can't agree with this person anymore, but to belabor the point a little bit further, the example used in the article is basically someone took her voice, and this person worked on Baldur's Gate 3, one of the female characters in there, and they used it for, let's just say, X-rated content.
Ah.
And they had this voice actor go and listen to it, and they felt like completely.
So, do you remember? It's not that long ago. I think it was even last year. The whole conspiracy about what they call deepfake.
Oh yeah.
Where they take celebrities' faces and put them on people doing inappropriate things.
Yeah.
This is literally the next step.
Yeah.
It's just now you have their voice, and as much as I want to say this is terrible, I'm going to say that this is terrible, but I don't know if this can be stopped.
No, yeah, that's the problem. I mean, the Pandora's box of AI has been opened.
Well, that and people who are. It almost becomes an argument about the anonymity of the internet, because when people are left to anonymity, they can get away with whatever they want, and they tend to do things that they normally wouldn't do if their name was attached to it. Exactly. So, yeah, it's messed up.
Yeah, it really is. I don't know what else to say other than I
sympathize with these actors.
Yes, I do. I think you shouldn't do it. And
if you happen to stumble upon this stuff, I ain't gonna judge your life, but if you're gonna stumble upon this stuff, you would be better off just ignoring it, moving away from it, all sorts of things that involve not giving any credit or attention to such a terrible practice.
Yeah. So I mean,
we gotta stop ending on bad notes.
I know.
We keep ending on bummer stories.
I know. I mean, there's one last thing you shouldn't do. It's play Faxanadu. Don't do it. Okay.
First off, we are going to play Faxanadu. We've already talked about this, and I don't know when we're going to put it up on the channel, but I am going to play through Faxanadu, and this guy's going to sit next to me, and we're going to go over it, and we're going to talk, and we're going to talk about stuff that has anything and everything and nothing to do with Faxanadu, but it's going to be kind of like our own Let's Play, and we're just going to go over the problems that Monster has with the game, and I'm going to show you all the joys that I have with the game.
I think he shouldn't be allowed to do this because it's cruel and unusual torture or punishment. Denied under the United States Constitution. Thank you very much.
If you want to see this happen, say something in the comments down below. Get likes, get comments, give all your support. Let us know, and we'll make it happen.
I'm going to find something you don't like.
I told you we would do that.
Anyway,
we're going to get out of here because he's now grumpy. Expect us to be on a more weekly basis now that busier season for both of us is going to be ending soon.
Yeah.
But beyond that, we are going to be working on upgrading the channel, and keep your eyes and ears peeled for that. We appreciate everyone who's been with us this far, and for everyone who keeps joining us, welcome. Thank you for coming along on this crazy ride, and we just hope you guys have yourselves a fantastic week. Have a fantastic day. Enjoy your games, and we'll see you in the next one.
Take care.
Later.